Josh has done some very bad things, and he's very sorry.
Hi, beautiful people. Today's subject matter is going to be dark and heavy, but it is important to unpack all of this for both me and Jen, because the God is Grey channel is about elevating your faith and really coming to terms with who you are and who God made you to be. But it's also about calling out these points of toxic theology and really looking at how they've had an effect in the real world. We've seen it play out over decades and decades, and then we still see this toxic theology being spewed in real time every Sunday, Wednesday, and Tuesday at multiple churches. So this is why we address these things. This is not for clicks. This is not to gossip. This is not fun. But the only way that I'm making it slightly more fun, for lack of a better word, is by bringing in my girl Jen from Fundie Fridays. Before we get all dark and dreary, would you please tell us how you got started on your channel, Fundie Fridays?
So Fundie Fridays, if you don't know, I talk about different aspects of Christian fundamentalism while I do my makeup. I mostly do the makeup as a gimmick because my roommate told me to do Fundie Fridays like Bailey Sarian does Murder Mystery Mondays. And I don't think Bailey Sarian's mad because she has commented on my channel. So.
I noticed that. I love her work too, and her transformations are beautiful as well.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. I try to throw in some humor and help people deconstruct if they need to, come to terms with what happened to them. But mostly I throw my opinions in, but I try to be anthropological as much as I can.
Yeah, I definitely see that in you. And when we were initially talking, Jen, I told you, I feel like you have an academic approach that feels a little distant, which I think really helps, because for me and for a lot of people coming from this fundamentalist or conservative background, it just feels really nice to see someone unpacking it from that point of view that's not so emotional and driven by like pain or heartbreak, because that is definitely a part of what at least began to drive me. I think it's evolved over the years, hopefully. But yeah, it's really refreshing to see such logic and just concise, real information coming from a source that is just like, here, this is what it is, take it for what it is. And then you have your little snarky opinions that I obviously appreciate. Can I ask you though, I don't know your history. Do you come from this background at all, or are you just fascinated by the subject matter?
I was kind of raised atheist. My mom was Catholic, but my dad wasn't, so I just kind of absorbed whatever. Haven't really believed since I was 10 or 11, but I've had a fascination with fundamentalism because, like a lot of people, I went down the Duggar rabbit hole and found out a lot more information than I bargained for. And so that kind of took off because I do have a lot of respect for religious people. I think it is really cool that you have faith, and I feel like there is a sense of peace that I will never have. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but like I admire that you've
kind of awful, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, like I might worry about existential dread a little bit more than maybe a Christian would, because
not necessarily.
Hey, we got a lot more in common than I thought.
Okay, so before we get started on the Josh Duggar scandal, and I mean, it's beyond a scandal. It is a case now that's with the FBI and with Homeland Security. So this is the real deal. But first, I just want to thank everybody so much who is buying their copies of On Her Knees. It has been so wonderful to share this with all of you and to see you reposting the book and putting it on the beach and in the airport. And if you have to hide it under your bed because it's too salacious for someone, I love that too. That was kind of my original inspiration for it, because I wanted to just be dead honest and share my story void of shame, so that anything that you might be going through in your deconstruction process, even if you haven't begun that journey yet, hopefully you will see this cautionary tale that I wrote and avoid a lot of the snafus that I fell into and live a more holistic, happy, joyful life, whatever faith practice you end up practicing. So that's that. That's my spiel on Her Knees. Please continue to rate, give it 5 stars on Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble, and I would love to just keep ascending in the charts because it's just very important to me that people receive this message, and On Her Knees is very dear to my heart. Oh, and then the last thing I want to mention is that I am still sponsored by ManiMe Nails, which I absolutely love. They are these little stick-on nails, and they have all these amazing designs that I adore. They stay on for me for like 2 weeks, and they also have little extra stickies so that if they fall off, you can refresh your manicure at any time. And you can go to the link below for my offer code to get a GODISGREY discount. Okay, I think we've taken care of all of our shop stuff. Now, Jen, everyone watching, I do want to mention a trigger warning, very important for this video. We are going to be talking a lot about CSA and CP. If you don't know what these stand for, please give it a Google and see what we're talking about and assess whether or not you want to stay for this video. No shame, no judgment if it's content that is too heavy for you. I completely understand not wanting to look at these elements of life if you feel like that would bring you into an unhealthy place or make you feel just really unhappy on a day when you just want to stay up. But that said, Jen, this Josh Duggar situation is like really, really extraordinarily awful. I just want to hear some of your initial thoughts on the whole situation.
Well, I think we were all desperately hoping that it was money laundering. And I've even seen like people making memes about this. Like we were all excited to see him go for a financial crime, and then we found out what it was, and we're like, this isn't fun anymore.
I know that it's a really bold statement to just like blanket say these behaviors, addictions, crimes are a product of fundamentalist culture. But could you explain why, and I know we share this opinion, why we actually feel that there is a through line between these sorts of teachings and then the outcomes like this?
So let's see, fundamentalism, you've got this huge emphasis on purity culture, and it's not just sexual stuff. It's even from when you're a child, you're worthless, you're a sinner, you need to repent. You know, I just got done watching Jesus Camp, and I don't know if the statistics are still the same, but it was something like 40% of born again Christians get baptized before they're 13. So like this is already like you already feel pretty bad about yourself before you're even like in your formative years. Well, in your formative years, but
yeah, a lot of us got captured by this somehow. I was 12, and I'm really interested and intrigued to see that that's a common story that a lot of people have. This prepubescent, very impressionable moment. You're about to enter puberty. You're about to enter your sexual awakening. And in my book, On Her Knees, I describe my sexuality as a tree growing through cement, because that's how the church made me feel. It was like this burgeoning, blossoming awakening. And the moment that was happening, it was just cemented in this rhetoric that was very, very painful for me personally. I know it was in my life. Linda K. Klein's book, Pure, outlines that it happens for a lot of people. We know all of the stories. So yeah. So Jen and I are going to dive into a bunch of clips from the Duggar family, from 19 Kids and Counting, the show on TLC. And so much of this for me too is how allegations of abuse are mishandled and mistreated in these religious circles. And a lot of this isn't to talk trash. Again, like I said, it's really to hopefully wake people up, stir people's spirits, and remind people that a crime is a crime, and an alleged crime needs to be taken really, really seriously.
19 Kids and Counting. The show would focus on the Duggars' ever-expanding family, their devout faith, traditional values, and strict courting rules that include chaperones, no kissing before marriage, and no hand-holding before an engagement.
Joshua take thee, Anna, to be my wedded wife.
The couple proudly waiting until they said I do to even kiss for the first time.
I think it's a great plan to just be pure, wait, for the one that God has for you. And on your wedding day, you get to enjoy all the physical aspects of that relationship.
Hello, I'm Josh Duggar.
2 years ago, Josh accepted a high-profile job with the Family Research Council, a deeply conservative lobbying group devoted to promoting a Christian worldview.
There was an agenda to silence us, to silence those of us who believe in what is right. I was honored to grow up in a home where we had Christian values, where we had parents that loved each other, that loved the Lord. Let me tell you, that institution is under attack. We went to bat to elect conservative candidates who believe in what God believes, and that is that marriage is between one man and one woman for life.
Instagramming out this photo of himself and his wife sharing a drink from Chick-fil-A with the caption, "Marriage equals man plus woman."
This is why I don't drink Chick-fil-A. I just stick to wine. Cheers, Jen.
Yeah.
So I pulled those clips to kind of give an overview because Josh Duggar, from my cursory research, got really immersed in politics in the Trump era. He was all about family values, anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ, equal rights legislation. What can you tell us about his parlay into politics?
Josh was executive president, or he was something high up. I don't know if he actually had any power, but he was the executive president of Family Research Council, which was started as an offshoot of Focus on the Family by Lou Dobson, who is on the Mount Rushmore of fundamentalists, along with Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson. Like he's seen as the successor to a lot of these. But yeah, not only was FRC against gay rights and abortion, but they were also anti-birth control. Josh even went to all these rallies when Hobby Lobby was starting up with their birth control stuff. And there's videos of him giving interviews, and he's like, I haven't done a lot of research, but I can tell you that birth control causes abortions.
A lot of you might not understand that the birth control pill does cause abortions. When did you first learn about that?
Well, I've done a limited amount. I've done some research on the abortion, on the abortion-causing drugs, and there's a lot of them out there. And I think people are shocked to understand what is it, what this really is about.
In my research, I also saw that this particular organization is considered a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Tell us a little bit about the Duggars' upbringing.
Well, they do the courtship model, which they've gleaned from I Kissed Dating Goodbye, very popular in the 90s. And
wrote the foreword for my book, Joshua Harris. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure your audience already knows, but he's a good guy now. So
yeah,
so it's cool. But they do courtship, dating with a purpose. They always follow it up with that. Basically, you are kind of marrying a stranger. Some of them court for like a year and a half, which I feel like you could really get to know somebody, but sometimes it really is like 6 months from meeting to being married, and then 2 weeks later having a baby.
Wait, did you say meeting and 2 weeks later having a baby? I feel like the math doesn't work.
No, getting married and then, honeymoon baby.
Creating a baby within 2 weeks. Yes. And then also I do know, obviously from Joshua Harris's book, I Kissed Dating Goodbye, that there are ideals where you are not even dating alone. Like you're not alone with the person necessarily. Maybe your family is present and you're in family situations. I never watched 19 Kids and Counting, but I've seen clips where it looks like this was the vibe, that it's very like hands-on. The parents are very deeply and heavily involved in their kids' dating lives.
Yeah, they do chaperones in person. They listen in on the phone calls and the text messages, even the FaceTime. See, I'm old too. But
no doing the drugs.
But specifically the Duggars, and I don't know if everybody does this could have been a Jim Bob invention, but he does the 300-page questionnaire to try to vet the suitors. And they also believe in that culture of, even if you like somebody, you are not supposed to show it, especially if you're a girl. You must pretend like you have never met this person, because the suitor is supposed to come to the dad and ask permission and then see if you want to date. And by that time, like, the stakes are so high. Like, I can't imagine. I was thinking, there's been times in my life where I've like had a boyfriend or whatever, and I didn't even really like him, but I just wanted to stay with him because I didn't want to be lonely, and I wonder if that's how it is with them. Like maybe they thought they liked the person, but now, oops, you're already courting. Oops, you've already met the family. Now you're engaged. And now if you leave, it's going to be a huge spectacle, and they're going to make it your fault somehow. So basically, like, it's your free will, but is it your free will?
Yeah.
And especially, sometimes you don't even like somebody till you get to know them even more. Not necessarily in a sexual way, but like the friendship that you form with your partner is kind of impossible to have when dad has to read all of your text messages.
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, oh, you used a kissy face emoji here. Do we need to talk?
Oy, that's just so much anxiety. When I was saving myself for marriage, quote unquote, the anxiety for me was like, if you date someone, they have to be a potential spouse. And being able to assess whether or not someone is a potential spouse from like 2 conversations at a Starbucks before you have to make this grandiose proclamation to the world that this is someone you're dating is so much anxiety. Even the anxiety of men, I've heard in many cases, coming up to a father or a pastor and being like, the Lord, the Holy Spirit gave me a dream, gave me a vision, gave me a promise that this woman is meant to be my wife. And I know I've spoken to a lot of women in my own life who a man had said that to her, and then she had to sort of fall in line, because it's not like this guy is telling me he likes me. He is saying, the Lord said that we are supposed to be together.
Who wouldn't say no to the Lord?
Exactly. Yeah. So I can only imagine the amount of anxiety. I cannot imagine my father reading my text messages. I cannot imagine. I can't even imagine a friend reading intimate text messages. And they don't even have to be sex, just like any sort of intimacy between people.
Even if I'm talking about the grocery list, I don't want you reading my texts.
Even that is intimate. That is some ish right there. Yes. Oh my goodness. All right. So here is what is currently, as of today, happening with Josh Duggar, the FBI, and Homeland Security.
A Homeland Security agent has detailed disturbing allegations in the federal investigation into Josh Duggar. Prosecutors allege that Duggar had more than 200 images of children on his devices. According to Faulkner, one file depicted child sex abuse involving children ranging from 18 months to 12 years of age. The agent described the images as in the top 5 of the worst that he has ever examined.
So I find it really distressing that these are all allegations. It's all alleged. But I keep hearing this quote over and over again, that when they're investigating what was found on Josh Duggar's computer, they said it was the quote, top 5 worst of the worst. I definitely do not encourage anyone to look any deeper to figure out what that might mean. Jen and I both have. We both do not recommend you going down that dark rabbit hole. But Jen, what else could you tell us about these charges, or what you kind of felt and experienced while this story was breaking?
Well, it just kept getting worse, worse and worse as we were hearing. And I will say that even Googling Josh Duggar arrest will probably not yield very good results, because a lot of times these news outlets put, like, they use more descriptive language in the title. So that's just another warning too. Like, I posted one of the news links on my Discord, and I didn't even realize how bad it was until the chat started freaking out. So just, it's bad all around. So just be careful. May 2019 was when Homeland Security raided the car lot. And the reason they raided the car lot is because if you look at images like that, like, it's being tracked. Even if you think that you're on a website where that's not going to happen, they are tracking every single thing. So they linked the downloads to his IP address, and they called the internet company, and it was listed as the car lot. So they went to the car lot, but he wasn't there, and they found out, it's linked to Josh Duggar. And he had done all these extra things to conceal it. He had these passwords, special programs. So he was going out of his way to look at this stuff and try to hide it. And when the cops came, Josh was like, oh, can I see my lawyer? And they took his phone, because people that look at these types of images, a lot of times they have programs on their phone of a kill switch where they can delete it remotely. So that's why they take your phone away. Now, I don't know if that's going to get brought up later as like, you mishandled my case, we have to throw it out. Hopefully not. But they took his phone for that. And like 2 years later, because they have to have all the evidence and make sure that they are airtight, because if they make one mistake, the whole thing could be thrown out. So they made sure that they had him before they arrested him. The cops came to his house and they were like, we can come in guns a-blazing and we don't want to scare your kids. So would you have your wife drive you to the jail so we can arrest you there? And that image is burned in my mind of his wife in the car. Like, I don't even know how long the car ride was, but just imagine, like, I've been wondering, did she yell at him? Did he say anything? You know, did they listen to the radio? Like, you ever get fixated on macabre topics like that? And then he went in, so he is saying that he turned himself in, and he's trying to use that as like, see, I'm a upstanding citizen. I turned myself in. It's a amazing thing.
Yeah, that doesn't seem very meaningful to me at all.
And they forensically, whatever that means, went through the computer, all of his computers, and they showed the desktop computer, like the screensaver and stuff, at the trial to prove this is Josh's computer. It's got a picture of him and his wife and his kids smiling. This has to be his computer, because he also was like, it's not mine. I don't know how that got there. And so the prosecution's like, well, why is your face on this computer? Why is your password your birthday? They have overwhelming amount of evidence to prove that it's him. But I think it's 2 counts of downloading and possession. One of the files was like a zip folder and it had like 65 images, and they briefly explained what some of those were. And then of course the major thing was he had this very famous piece of child abuse imagery that is so bad that it was believed to be an urban legend. Like, that's where I heard about it, was like creepypastas, people being like, oh, have you heard about this? Yeah, that's not real. Why would it, you know, it's like people say films aren't real. But they are, and unfortunately this video is very real and it's really horrible.
What we're talking about right now brings me to Philippians 4:8. Whatever is good, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, whatever is excellent or praiseworthy, look on such things. I used to go into these rabbit holes that were super dark. What was it, like .com? I feel like I shouldn't give the address, but I used to go down these dark rabbit holes myself, and I would see images that are burned in my brain forever. So again, I think the salaciousness of the subject matter is not something that I would recommend anyone to like infuse into their knowledge or their spirit. And as you addressed too, Josh had a program on his computer called Covenant Eye.
Faulkner also says that Duggar had a program on his computer called Covenant Eyes, which the agent called accountability software that monitors and reports internet usage to a partner. It is meant to help people with porn addictions. According to Faulkner, the program was registered to Duggar and would send reports to his wife, Anna. Faulkner further explains through that the program was unable to detect Duggar's internet usage on the password-protected network that he used.
Porn addiction is a real thing, but the way that fundamentalists use it, they act like if you look at porn one time, you're addicted. And it's because just their view of sex is so warped that it's impossible to even like have a healthy discussion about masturbation or whatever. Like, it's just all bad. You can't talk about it. And so I wonder if that made Josh feel like, you know, I've already gone past the point of no return. All of these sins are equal, might as well. Not that that's an excuse, but I feel like they're like, it's all bad, so I'm gonna do it anyway.
Right. Let's talk about that, because I also recently did a video about men's purity culture. And there's one point where Mike Todd, who's this really big Christian figure, flat out uses this slippery slope fallacy in a sermon. And he outright goes into like, first you're watching men and women, and then you're watching women and women, and men, and then bestiality. And then like at the very end, he talks about CP, just them conflating everything as a sin. Normal sexual desire, normal for lack of a better word, but sexual desire that is consensual, that's something two people are agreeing upon, regardless of what that looks like for those two people, if it's not harming anybody, ends up being in the same category of, quote, sin as CP, as non-consensual sex. And we see that over and over again in these communities.
It reminds me of like the idea of a gateway drug.
Right.
That
exactly.
You smoke weed, heroin addict, next day. That's what they think.
100%. I got those same kind of messages in church all the time.
If they had any sort of, not even comprehensive sex education, some sort of sex education, because in the Duggars culture, they don't even like teach you like the parts until the day before your wedding.
Really?
Because they don't want to get you upset. It's called stirring up desires that cannot be righteously fulfilled. So, and there's interviews where they're like, I didn't want to look it up because it would just get me all upset. I'm gonna wait till before I'm married. Now the girls know because they have to be mothers essentially since they're 12, like when they hit 12, they gotta start raising their siblings. So they know all about the reproductive system, but boys, and that's another thing. Purity culture is just as bad to guys. I know we spend a lot of time talking about how bad it is for women, but that's because women's sexuality is already a political thing. We've been knew that, but with guys, like it just does not reflect very well on them because the way that these fundamentalists talk about men, it makes them not sound like, I don't want to be friends with them. If they think that every woman is there for either getting married to or other things, they act like they're uncontrollable, that they have all these horrible urges, that they're a monster if they touch themselves. Like it's bad. And then that also sets it up for, well, he touched that girl. What do you expect? Boys will be boys. It's like, this is set up for everybody to fail top to bottom.
Yeah. And now this whole situation goes back to the original story, which broke in 2015 when TLC canceled 19 Kids and Counting following sexual abuse allegations by Josh within his family.
For years, the Duggar family has been portrayed on their TLC show, 19 Kids and Counting, as a wholesome Christian family with old-fashioned values.
All right, let's all hold hands here, okay?
No TV, modest dress.
This one for the double date.
No cursing, and above all, no premarital sex.
We decided that there was going to be no kissing before marriage.
But now they are a family under fire after allegations surfaced their oldest child, Josh Duggar, had inappropriate contact with several underage girls beginning when he was 14 years old. The news came to light when In Touch magazine obtained a decade-old police report detailing Josh's alleged molestation. According to the magazine, the heavily redacted report details how Josh, whose name did not appear, was investigated for multiple sex offenses, including forcible fondling, against 5 girls in 2002 and 2003. In Touch magazine says charges were never pressed, and the statute of limitations has expired.
The other thing is that this police report did not happen until Oprah sent an anonymous email to the police because they were supposed to be on her show, and somebody was like, hey, there's this dirty little secret about the Duggars. So they probably wouldn't have even gone to the police if their hand wasn't forced. So that's the other thing. It was not in good faith.
I didn't realize that was a sequence of events, that it was it was essentially being hidden from the public. And you're saying TLC was aware of this?
I don't know how aware, but this was well known in the community because this is going back on the snark boards. There's this person and their alias was named Raising Ruth, and they were talking about, I know this dirty little secret about Josh, like in 2005. They were online and nobody believed them. They're like, why are you lying about this Christian family? And it turns out it was real. So I'm deducing with that everybody knew. So
is the consensus or idea that TLC was actually aware of this abuse before Oprah found out about it and like blew the whole story out of the water?
Well, we don't have concrete proof that they knew. It was kind of an open secret in Northwest Arkansas. A lot of people knew. It was very hush-hush. So there was even people at the time commenting about it online and nobody believed them. So all signs are pointing to somebody had to know, But then again, I can't prove that.
Yeah. I mean, we see some problematic issues with TLC, to say the least. I'm just angry at TLC for platforming really, truly problematic people with very hateful ideas and making it look glossy and like it's perfectly okay and it's actually funny and interesting. It's not funny or interesting to me. It's a problem.
Yeah, they do a lot of exploitation on that channel.
Yeah. So the sequence of events that we know of is that Josh Duggar was reported to police for this abuse that occurred within his household, some members that were outside of his family. But also in the midst of that scandal, I noticed that he had gotten enmeshed in this Ashley Madison scandal.
The website, once a refuge for married cheaters, now exposing their sins. Among the high-profile victims of the Ashley Madison hack, Vatican figures and over 13,000 U.S. government employees. In a statement on the Duggar family website, Josh calls himself the biggest hypocrite ever, saying, while espousing faith and family values, I have been unfaithful to my wife.
Marriage is central to the family.
It's hypocrisy, but if you look at it from a psychological perspective, this is someone who is so self-hating, so ashamed, so desperate about what they're doing that they literally go out there and try to help others not do it because underneath they know they can't not do it.
He even confessed that he has a porn addiction, but later took that admission down.
Yeah, they love to redact things.
Really?
Yeah, because I remember the original statement that mentioned porn addiction because it got screenshotted and put on Free Ginger. And then the new one came out and we're like, you're not very sneaky. So Ashley Madison's website for cheating on your spouse. I don't know how much actual cheating happens because it turns out that a lot of the people on that site are bots. But he paid for the guaranteed affair package, which is $600, which to me reads maybe, he bought some sex from somebody. I don't know.
Okay.
And the reason why we found out is because there was the credit card leaks, and he uses the same information for every freaking website. That's also how we found his OkCupid profile, because he used the same email. And but so in the original statement, he talked about the porn addiction, which we're like, is that even true? Especially now that we know what he was looking at is not considered porn. So I wonder how they feel about that now.
Mm-hmm.
And then he cheated on his wife with another woman who works in the sex industry, and she has since come out and talked about her experience with Josh was really horrible. And yeah, I don't know much else I can add to that.
I know, well, horrible in what way?
She didn't say that it was sexual assault, probably because, that's such a loaded word, but she talked about being physically abused during the encounter.
Geez. And look, I can't overstress enough how we're talking about allegations and allegedlys, but this all fits into the script and the narrative that I was given in the evangelical church. Again, just never learning about consent, always learning that women are here to serve men, that men have these insatiable desires and, quote, needs. It's not even a desire, it's a need. Men have needs, your husband has needs. And because of that, consent, women's pleasure, all of these things were never brought into the narrative. And all I'm going to say is that wouldn't surprise me if a man that was brought up in this culture didn't know what consent or women's pleasure looked like. Not a surprising story to hear.
They have this concept called being joyfully available. So it's like you have to do it with him and you have to do it with a smile. And Michelle's talked about this a lot. She'll say things like, anybody can make your man a sandwich, but only you can know him biblically. Oh, well.
Joyfully available. That's terrible.
Yeah,
That's
which just goes along with submission, but they're trying to make it sound fun. They're like, it's joyfully available. Joy.
Oh my gosh. I hate it. I hate it so much. So this is where my heart starts breaking even more. My heart's broken this whole time, but there are so many victims in this situation. There's victims on allegedly on Josh's computers, and that's atrocious, but also his wife, Anna Duggar.
Today, People magazine quoting a family source saying Anna is not likely to leave him and that she will likely absorb some of the blame for his indiscretions. A reaction sex therapist Rob Weiss says is common.
I see spouses who are wounded by profound infidelity or sex addiction every day. And universally, on some level, they feel like, you know, if I was prettier or more attractive, then they wouldn't be doing this. I mean, if you look at this man's history, he was acting out sexually long before he met his wife.
Josh was my first love. He's my one and only. My only hope was to cling to my faith, because I know if I went off of what I was feeling, I would turn a mess into a disaster. And so I think in the stun and in the shock of everything, I was just praying, God, help me to know how to respond to all of this.
Her trying to, it sounds like, repress feelings. A lot of times, conservative and fundamental Christians will slide into my DMs or get in my comment section and be like, you're going off your feelings. You're not following the Lord, you're following your feelings. And I know that is because we are being told our heart is deceitful, our flesh is evil, and that we as women are in charge of setting the tone of our home. We are in charge of setting the tone of how a tragedy like this goes down. And I was watching clips of the entire family really elevating his wife for what I see as the repression of her emotions, her lack of invitation to just freak the F out over what she just experienced, which she's absolutely worthy to do. Anna, I'm here for you. Jen is here for you. If you ever need us, we are freaking here waiting for you. We love you. I'm just devastated just watching all of it. And I know I don't like pulling from sources like People magazine, for the love of God, but I pulled it anyway because when this alleged friend talking about a woman absorbing the blame, again, that really felt true to me because of purity culture. It all goes back to, are you being a stumbling block? Is any of this your fault? Which is a good point or place to bring up this.
Oh, yeah.
So Jen, you sent me this horrifying counseling essay document. Can you tell me where this is from and the context of this document?
So the Duggars are openly and heavily affiliated with this organization called the Institute of Basic Life Principles. It's founded by Bill Gothard, who has his own sex scandal.
Or many sex scandals, yeah?
Yeah, he's been doing it since the 70s and never stopped.
Wow.
And there's an ATI is the homeschooling component of IBLP, Advanced Training Institute, and their curriculum consists of these things called wisdom booklets. And the wisdom booklets, like sometimes they'll have real education, like they'll have some math problems or like, you know, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell and stuff like that. But mostly it's religious indoctrination. And it's really troubling that they have a specific wisdom booklet that is about counseling sexual abuse, but it doesn't say what you would hope it would say. It's all about, how did you cause this? Well, literally it says, why did God let this happen? Is there any guilt? And then it tells you how to pray, but it's just like, this is definitely setting up predators for success.
Yeah, everything about this is so upsetting to me. Like this document, I was processing this by my freaking self in my house last night. I was mad at you, Jen, because I hate it. It's like, thank you for bringing this disturbing stuff to me. Parts of our being, you know, I talk so much on the God is Great channel about embodiment. I bring you Jamie Lee Finch, Tara Tang, to talk about the importance of embodiment. This is your vessel. The Bible says to honor your body. And here we are being told in this document, the parts of our being, emotion, will, mind, spirit with a big heart, soul, body. 2, what part is the most important? How about none? How about they're all equally important? How about this is everything that you were given by God to walk through this life? When we disregard body, which is what this is trying to say, it's trying to say your spirit is elevated. Your spirit is the most important thing. Your body, whatever. So whatever happens to your body, it wasn't the most important thing. I can't think of a more dismissive thing to tell a victim. I'm so mad.
There's a lot of a lack of bodily autonomy because your body is not yours anyway, it's God's. So,
Right.
you know, and once you're married, you have to submit to your husband. So
Your body as a woman is never your own in this sort of rhetoric. You belong to God, then you belong to your father, secondary to God, then you belong to your husband. You are never your own. That's why Jamie Lee Finch's book is called You Are Your Own, because that's true.
It's just this dichotomy of how are women supposed to be the most pious and holy and like rein in these men, but also they're simultaneously like so sexual and just men just go crazy if they look at your ankle, you know, like how can it be both? Because they treat it like it is both.
Yeah. Again, Tara Tang said in our interview, men are in charge of everything in the entire world, the church, the leadership, all of it. And the only thing they supposedly can't control is their sexual urges. It's BS, it's excuses, it's victim blaming. Document continues to be horrifying. If anyone needs to leave the video now, I don't blame you. This is horrible. Number 3, what did the offender damage? What parts do we damage with bitterness and guilt?
Or a lot of times they'll be like, you have to forgive your abuser. If you don't forgive them, you'll feel really bad. Like you'll have to live with that burden of unforgiveness instead of being like, your abuser should be the one that says sorry or tries to make it better or whatever. They're like, how can you feel better about it?
Yeah. This document doesn't even address or give any bearing or responsibility on the offender.
At the top it says if, it's something like if the person was not at fault. Yeah, number 6.
Hold on, we're getting there. My God. I hate this document so much. Number 4, why did God let it happen? First of all, God doesn't let things happen. People have autonomy over their own choices. People make choices and they affect you in your life. Result of defrauding by immodest stress, indecent exposure, being out from protection of our parents, being with evil friends. Your fault, your fault, your fault, your fault. 5, is there any guilt for disobedience? This is all about the victims. Where is a document about the offender? Is there not one?
Does not exist.
I'm going to throw my computer across.
Well, it's just like, this is saying not when, or wait, this is saying not if, but when, essentially.
Yeah. Is there any guilt for not reporting the crime? And this reminded me of Jacob Roloff, who was another member of the TLC, from my opinion, toxic community of programming. He was on Little People Big Worlds, and he came out with allegations that he had been abused by someone that was on the staff of TLC, one of the producers. This is so disrespectful for anyone, you know, failing to report it. Jacob Roloff made a whole statement about why it took him so long to say it. There's no responsibility on a victim of how soon they have to report it. Every ounce of responsibility goes on the perpetrator. This kind of rhetoric also invites people to not realize they're in control of their own actions. And I'm not saying that's an excuse.
It definitely encourages this behavior because, like you said, it's removing any fault because they're like, well, she defrauded me.
Yeah, I don't want to harp on this document basically because it's horrible. I just think it unfortunately shows how so quickly a victim is blamed for what has happened to them in these circles. And then also the community does not have the appropriate tools, defense, healing mechanisms, support to be able to help anyone like Josh Duggar, who, you know, from these accounts of his own parents, came to his parents himself to admit what he had done. You know, I've read stories about Jeffrey Dahmer, for example, and how many times he cried out for help, at like telling people, showing people some of the terrible things he had done to animals, for example, and there was just no system in place. He was showing up to school drunk, and teachers were just like faulting him for being an alcoholic instead of being like, why is this 16-year-old drunk every day?
Mm-hmm.
Like the only bit of gratitude I can have is all of the new education and enlightenment we're getting on these subject matters. And again, channels like yours, Jen, who are calling these things out. So I pulled some clips from this interview between Megyn Kelly and the patriarchy and matriarchy of the Duggars.
Son Josh came to us on his own, and he was crying, and he had just turned 14, and he said that he had actually improperly touched some of our daughters.
I think as parents, we felt, we're failures. You know, here we tried to raise our kids to do what's right, to know what's right. And yet, one of our children made some really bad choices. And I think as a parent, we were devastated.
Did he explain why? I mean, was that a question that you asked?
He said he was just curious about girls, and he had gone in and just basically touched them over their clothes while they were asleep, and they didn't even know he had done it.
Look at her face right here. She's
yeah,
like,
they just made it so much worse. This is like live on air watching them dig their own grave. Because you haven't even got to the really bad part of the interview where he's like, you know, doubling down on transphobia to get the heat off of Josh.
Yeah, no, don't worry. We will get there. Yeah, I don't know. I think the outstanding part of all of this to me is the idea that, again, it was a moral failing because this was a 14-year-old boy coming to me, I'm sorry, like courageously to his parents who are arguably, I mean, I know they can come off as really kind or whatever, but he is under very strict law in that household. And he came to tell them this secret of his, this thing that obviously he knew was wrong. And it really does break my heart that he had no true place to land, where he was not given the help that he needed. And also, another reason I'm making this video with you, Jen, is because I know this is a beast in our society in general that has not been conquered. Mm-hmm. I have had people who have this attraction slide into my DMs and tell their stories. And I always think of this about how, like, who are these people supposed to tell? I'm so sorry. I don't even know the right terminology for it because I don't want to call it an orientation and normalize it because it's not. And it's so often conflated with sexual orientations in the LGBTQ community, which is completely unfair because we're talking about consensual relationships in that regard. And then this crosses over into the non-consensual. And there are a lot of people that have been abused in their childhood that are perpetuating that same harm onto the next generation. It's this vicious cycle that keeps going and going and going because of our misunderstandings, because of me, for all the research I've done on sexuality, sitting here, I still don't even know the right terminology and the right words to properly address that. And I'm going to sit here right now and say, I'm so sorry for that. I need to learn more.
Juvenile molesters are not in the same category, and that's why it's important to realize if they get treatment early on, it is possible for them to get better. It's very complex, and very often these issues remain a secret. Families don't know how to deal with it, and in some cases don't deal with it at all, which is the worst case scenario.
He went and asked God to forgive him. He went back and asked those that he had offended to forgive him. But we felt like the last jurisdiction of who he needed to make things right with was the law.
What's offensive to me is the lack of understanding of how egregious what he did was to the members of his family. They weren't offended. They were sexually assaulted.
We went into the Arkansas State Police and
at police headquarters.
At the police headquarters, walked in and said, "Hey, my son has something that he needs to share with you."
I know that the ultimate one, before you really got help, involved a very young daughter, and I'll avoid the age because I don't want to identify anyone specifically, but a single digit.
That's when we pulled him out of the house and we said, "He can't be here." And so we pulled him out, and then he went through that working with that man.
Yeah,
and
so he goes
really,
to counseling. This is not like a licensed therapist. It's somebody, a Christian-based.
Christian-based, but I tell you what,
treatment facility.
It really had a huge impact on his life.
I do appreciate that Megyn Kelly is holding their feet to the fire and just asking them to acknowledge that this is not accredited counseling that Josh initially got, that this is just some Christian dude.
Yeah.
That they sent him to. And then this is a huge plot twist that I did not see coming.
He told it all.
He told everything. And we had no idea that what that officer was going through on his own.
So the audience knows that officer is now in jail for 56 years for child pornography charges. Yeah. Did you have any idea he was involved in any of that? We had no idea.
That came out years later. I mean, we were like shocked to read that in the
So to critics who say, oh, they chose that guy because they thought he'd be sympathetic.
I didn't know anything about this guy besides that he was an officer there at the headquarters.
And now from prison now, where he's serving for child pornography, he says, well, he only told me about one incident, and that's why he didn't pursue charges.
I was questioning, why in the world would he say that? Maybe he could get out on parole or something sooner, because he actually violated the law in this case himself by not reporting it.
Remember this clip.
Jen.
What do you want?
Give me some wisdom. Oh my gosh.
There ain't nothing wise going on in this clip. And this came out, it was very heavily redacted, but people went and like figured out who the victims were by being like, oh, it's this long, so that must be this sister, or you know, which I think is really messed up, because after all this happened, they sued to have those documents sealed, which is totally their prerogative. Like, this sucks that they even had to give these interviews, especially I don't know if it'll show up, but Jill and Jessa, like, they did not need to be coming out and talking about this. Like, I'm sure they didn't want to.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Seemed like under duress, they felt like they had to say something. So I don't want to show those interviews again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I'm a very honorable person.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
His heart, his intent, he knew that it was wrong. But in theirs, they weren't even aware. It was like, you know, it wasn't to them. They didn't probably even understand that it was improper touch.
To make it okay.
Yeah.
That's like saying if somebody was roofied and they don't remember it, then it doesn't count. Like, that's what I'm getting from that. So since they were asleep, it doesn't count, and they're fine.
It was a very difficult situation, but as we've talked to other parents and different ones since then, a lot of families have said that they've had similar things happen in their families.
You know, there's statistics that show truth to that, which is horrifying, but that sounds like sort of a statement meant to diminish the severity of what happened.
Yeah, saying everybody does it does not make it okay.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the most Christian thing to say, or like the most overprotective thing to say? Like, if everyone jumped off a bridge, would you do it? It's like, yeah, no.
And the whole thing, where is Josh?
Where is Josh?
Time? Why are his sisters and his family speaking for him? Why is his poor wife on national television bearing her soul because of something you did, and you're, you know, off in the Cayman Islands or whatever?
Is that where he was?
No, I just made that up.
Like, are you getting confused with Ted Cruz? Because there's a lot of similarities I'm seeing.
Oh, there's also the thing, Josh has like a picture with every Republican. It's like a game to try to match. Like,
I know. That's like me and rappers. I like my rapper collection way better. Okay.
And just to clarify, it was 4 daughters and there was a babysitter outside of the family.
After this, all of our children received professional counseling, including Josh, who paid for his own counseling himself.
From an accredited professional counselor.
Did you ever worry that the treatment didn't work, especially with so many young children in the house?
No. No, Josh was a changed person, and you could,
we
it was
didn't,
evident in his life.
And we still had those safeguards in place. We don't let boys babysit. We don't let, they don't play hide and seek together. Two don't go off and hide. I mean, there's just a lot of things that we put in place, and we said, you're not alone in a room with someone else. You always be out visible, and little ones don't sit on big boys' laps or people that you don't know, or even family members, unless it's your daddy.
Okay, first of all, those safeguards were not true. Like, we have pictures of little kids sitting on Josh's lap from like 2018, so that's not even true. And the second thing, the way they're like, oh, siblings can't be alone together or whatever, like, they're making it sound like that children are automatically like attracted to each other. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're trying to make it sound like, I don't know, they're trying to make it sound like a regular adult relationship when it's not.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I was going to say, is that this is still anxiety producing of a reaction to me, because to say like, oh, our reaction is going to be to assume the worst all the time, or to assume that everyone's going to be predatory, or to assume that because you're a woman, men are just going to come onto you sexually, and therefore you can engage in what could definitely be very innocent behavior. Like, I have an older brother and a younger brother, and we're all really affectionate with each other, and it's always been all good. Like, I don't want people to feel like those elements of life are robbed from them just because they're a male and XYZ could happen. Like, that is still stealing the joy and the truth of like love and relationship from people. I don't know what the solution is, but I don't think that's it.
We can definitely say that. This ain't it.
This ain't it. There you go.
And you know what? This isn't something we wanted to come out, but if people can see that Josh, who did these very bad things when he was a young person, that God could forgive him for these terrible things, then I hope other people realize that God can forgive them and also make them a new creature.
I understand God's forgiveness is very important, and only God can judge you and all that good stuff. But you cannot neglect your relationships here on earth, because just because God forgave you, which I don't know if he did, I don't know the guy, your sisters certainly are still traumatized, and even if they forgive you, it was under duress.
That's really complicated. There just seems like such a rush and imperative to be like, and now we have moved forward. It reminds me of AA in a way, because that whole notion is that you are an alcoholic. You could always at any time fall back into that behavior, and therefore you really need to like have your guard up, have your armor on, and know, and also be very aware of the situations you're putting in yourself into and what could trigger you back into that behavior. I think that his parents were remiss and the community was remiss to understand that this is a lifelong problem, and that it's not about forgiveness. It's not about moving forward. It is about acknowledging that this is something inside of him that he has to be aware of for his entire life.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So we have two last points, because I don't want to leave you in complete hopelessness. First, we're still going to do the dreary stuff, which is this mind-numbing move that Michelle Duggar made.
Matriarch Michelle Duggar did a robocall in August when the City Council of Fayetteville, Arkansas was considering an anti-gay discrimination ordinance.
The Fayetteville City Council is voting on an ordinance this Tuesday night that would allow men, yes, I said men, to use women's and girls' restrooms, locker rooms, showers, sleeping areas, and other areas that are designated for females only. We should never place the preference of an adult over the safety and innocence of a child.
Folks have used that in the past week against you, saying, how could you unfairly, in their view, compare transgendered people to child molesters, suggest they are child molesters, knowing what you know about Josh?
I think that protecting young girls and not allowing young men and men in general to go into a girl's locker room is just common sense.
But this is different because you injected child into it.
I think you actually said that, and actually is an adult that preys on children. Joshua was actually 14 and just turned 15 when he did what he did. And I think the legal definition is 16 and up for being an adult preying on a child.
I want to point something out, a little Easter egg, because I've seen this clip a million times. You can slightly hear Michelle saying stop when Jim Bob, and you can play it again, when Jim Bob is like talking about, well, it's okay because he was 14.
Joshua was actually 14 and just turned 15 when he did what he did. And I think the legal definition is 16 and up for being an adult preying on a child.
A lot of us, I think, we believed, or we wanted to believe, that this was done. We were like, okay, maybe it really was just a situation when he was younger, and it's like, we gave you the benefit of the doubt. That's what you were asking for. You wanted us all to give you another chance, and we did, and here's what happened. So, just throw the whole Duggar out.
So the last thing I want to leave us with is a sense of hope. I know there is treatment for this, and I've pulled some things that I will link below. I found this USA article that I wanted to quote from a little bit. The Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network explains there is not a, quote, cure for sexual offending because it is, quote, not a disease, it's criminal behavior, but that, quote, every sex offender should have access to treatment. That is something I absolutely believe. I know we can sit here and be completely horrified, again, by the offender, by the perpetrator, which we are, but there is still a human being inside of that story. Josh Duggar, to me, is still a human being and still is in need of treatment so that he can be a healthy person, maybe not in society. I don't know if he's a danger to the world. It seems that he is. Like, do we have anything past him offending in childhood besides?
We have the Danica encounter, which is alleged. Nothing ever happened to that. I know they took into consideration his past behavior when they decided to give him bail.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. They still gave it to him. The family is preventing the kids from being interviewed. That's the only other way we would know if he did anything else. But since they're not allowed to be interviewed, we don't know. And hopefully nothing happened.
There's also this quote from Child Molestation Research and Prevention Institute, quote, as a society, we tend to have negative feelings about people who do these terrible things to kids, as we should. And because of that, I think sometimes we're short-sighted in terms of what should be provided to try to get them help, says Whitney Gabriel, who is a board member. I've said it multiple times already. I am going to do more work to figure out how to address these issues because statistically, we know there are a lot of victims in the world, which means statistically there has to be a lot of offenders and perpetrators that are in need of help. And for all of the research and work that you and I both do, Jen, for us to both sit here and be like, well, we don't know what they're supposed to do. It's like, well, I'm sure we're not the only ones. And I know that we need to do better in this area because, again, it's a vicious cycle. So many perpetrators of this abuse were abused themselves. And that's the kind of cycle that can go on for generations until it's finally broken by someone brave. The most credit I'll give to Josh is remembering this moment where he supposedly came to his parents without being caught, they say, without even being told on by his siblings. He apparently came to them from his own duress, from his own shame, guilt, etc., and was essentially asking for help. And it really does bring me so much grief and heartache to know that he was obviously not able to receive that help that he deserved and needed, and that his victims deserved and needed him to have as well. I would love to know, what is compelling you to continue to do the work that you're doing? What is the motivation behind Fundie Fridays? Because I know you're not out here just trying to snark and crap on people. Like, it's pretty obvious to me that you have a very big heart and that your motivation and your intention is in a really good place. That's what I believe. So I would love to hear from you.
I think it started out as, and it continues to be, a learning experience for me because I've never read the Bible or anything. So like when I learn about anything in Christianity, I'm learning it through the lens of this channel. And I wouldn't have ever looked any of the stuff up probably without it. So I enjoy learning about that. I try to understand like put myself in these people's places, because there's millions of people that have been a part of communities like this. And also now that people are starting to be like, oh, this affected me and your channel helped. Now I'm like, I can never stop now, because, you know, this community is just, it's amazing.
Yeah, you've built an incredible community too. I love it. And I'm so glad we're all in this community together. It really brings me so much joy and happiness to have you in it. Thank you for being here on the God is Great channel.
Thank you for having me.
Tell everybody where to find you.
Fundie Fridays on everything. I got my handle in before everybody else did.
That's perfect. That's it. Thank you for being here. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends, donate to my Patreon or Venmo if you can. We love you all,
Love you all so much.
God bless.
Have a very blessed day. Oh, it's amazing.
Perfect.